The Nintendo Switch 2 is just a week away, and with its release so close, I wanted to take the time in this video to talk about some of the misinformation surrounding the console.
First things first, let's talk about the prices. As you may have seen, the Nintendo Switch 2 will be retailing for $450 in the US, with the Mario Kart World bundle costing $500. The game's prices for this generation have also seen an increase to $70, which is in line with how first-party games are priced for our current generation. Now here comes the outliers. Mario Kart World, the Nintendo Switch 2 editions for Tears of the Kingdom, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and Mario Party Jamboree will all cost $80. And let's talk about why. Sometime after the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct back in April, Doug Bowser was interviewed by the press, and from these interviews we get to learn about Nintendo's new strategy when it comes to pricing. This can be used as an explanation for why Mario Kart World costs $80. Does it suck? Yes, it does. Is this going to end up being the new norm going forward? Most likely. In the interview, Doug Bowser stated this: "What you see is variable pricing. We'll look at each game, really look at the development that's gone into the game, the breadth and depth of gameplay, if you will, the durability over time, and the repeatability of gameplay experiences. Those are all factors, and there's many more that go into consideration of what is the right price point for the game. So I think you can anticipate that there will be variable pricing, and we haven't set a benchmark." Doug Bowser then goes on to give examples of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, but essentially, Nintendo will price a game based off how much players will get out of it. Let me put it like this. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, with its Booster Course Pass DLC, is around $85 in the US. Mario Kart World is $80 just by itself. Based off what Doug Bowser said, I think their new pricing strategy makes them believe that Mario Kart World will be worth the same as Mario Kart 8 Deluxe plus its DLC. You may be wondering now, but what about the Nintendo Switch 2 edition games? Which brings me to my next section. In the Switch 2 Direct that happened back in April, Nintendo showed off the 3 types of games playable on Nintendo Switch 2. These games are Nintendo Switch games, Nintendo Switch 2 games, and Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games. Most of your standard Nintendo Switch library will be backwards compatible with the Switch 2. These games will play on your Switch 2 just like how it runs on the original Switch. Some of these games, though, will receive a free update when played on your Nintendo Switch 2. These updates can range from increased frame rate, increased resolution, or even support with Switch 2 exclusive features like Game Share or the new mouse controls. Currently, Nintendo has a list on their website of which games are compatible with the Switch 2, which ones they are working on, and which games are currently not compatible or have some issues. They'll also provide information on why it's not compatible, or if it is compatible, what it might need to be played. One example is Nintendo Labo. Yes, technically you can use Nintendo Labo on your Switch 2, but the size of the cardboard pieces aren't made to fit the Switch 2 and its Joy-Cons. Another reason being that the new Joy-Cons no longer have an IR sensor built in, so if you wanted to play Nintendo Labo on your Switch 2, you might have to use an original Switch Joy-Con for that. Next are the regular Nintendo Switch 2 games. These are the easiest to explain. They are just regular games that are exclusive to the Switch 2. You won't find Street Fighter 6 or Cyberpunk 2077 or Mario Kart World on the original Switch, because these games were made with the Switch 2 in mind specifically. The last type of games are the Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games. I like to categorize these into 2 types: Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games and Nintendo Switch 2 Edition Plus games. The standard Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games are Nintendo Switch games that have been enhanced, like the games that get free updates, but they end up having more in-depth features like the 4K 60 FPS support on Switch 2. These games also include functionality with other functions exclusive to Nintendo Switch 2 or even Nintendo Switch smartphone app. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond is one of these games where it looks stunning, and it can end up running at 4K 60 FPS or run at 1440p 120 FPS. It also includes the functionality of the new Joy-Con mouse controls, which I'm honestly really excited for. Next, the Nintendo Switch 2 Edition Plus games are games that fall under the same umbrella as Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games, but they end up including some sort of extra content. Kirby and the Forgotten Land is one of those games that receives a Nintendo Switch 2 Edition Plus version. This game gets the same upgrades as any other Nintendo Switch 2 Edition game, but also gets added content to the base game in the form of a side story. To explain the pricing for these games, Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games will be $10 more than their Nintendo Switch counterpart, while Nintendo Switch 2 Edition Plus games will cost $20 more than their counterpart. This is why you'll see games like Kirby and the Forgotten Land retailing for $80 on the Switch 2, because it's a Nintendo Switch 2 Edition Plus game. So if you get $60 for the base game, add on $20 for the Switch 2 Edition, you end up with $80 in total. As a side note, if you already own the Nintendo Switch 1 version of these games, you can buy an upgrade pack through the eShop or in stores for either $10 or $20, depending on which version it is. If it's a Nintendo Switch 2 Edition upgrade, then it'll be $10. But if it's a Nintendo Switch 2 Edition Plus version, it'll cost $20. Standard Nintendo Switch 2 games will probably have a large range of prices, but expect most games costing $70, while games that are on the scale of Tears of the Kingdom or Mario Kart World will cost that extra $80 premium price. This doesn't mean that you won't see games under $70, because there were games on the original Switch that cost $15, $10, or even $50. Just look at Nintendo Switch Welcome Tour, for example. That game, last time I saw, only cost $10 on the eShop. Another game that I think will probably not cost as much is probably the new Drag and Drive game. I don't see that game retailing for anything above $60, maybe $40. Next up, let's talk about regular Switch 2 cartridges versus the game key cards that are available. With the Nintendo Switch 2, Nintendo is releasing a new way to sell physical games in the form of a game key card. Game key cards are essentially a physical key in the form of a Switch 2 cartridge that, when put into your Switch 2, will allow you to download the entire game onto your console. This differs from standard game cartridges where you could just put it into your Switch and play without any downloads, unless that game needed an update. When these were first announced, I was initially worried for physical game collecting, but part of me was hopeful that it meant no more download codes in a box. Right? Well, anyways, from what third-party developers have said, their only two options for selling their games physically on Nintendo Switch 2 are these new game key cards and the standard 64GB size game cartridges. With game key cards most likely being the cheaper option, it makes sense why so many companies are choosing this route, unless you're... yeah. Anyways, for the folks only interested in Nintendo games, you don't have to worry about this affecting you. I expect every Switch 2 game made by Nintendo to be a standard game cartridge where you can plug in and play, with no download required. But if I did have to say one good thing about the game key cards, I guess it's nice that you can still share your games or resell them for whatever reason, unlike fully digital games. This next section will be my last section, as I don't want this to run on for too long. Let's talk about the Terms and Service Agreement changes. If you haven't seen it yet, here it is on screen. Essentially what this says is that users are not allowed to pirate games, modify software, or modify your console at all. If you end up doing one of these things, you are subjected to getting your Nintendo account banned and your console, quote-unquote, permanently unusable in whole or in part. The way I'm currently interpreting this is that by violating any of the guidelines above, Nintendo can restrict your access to using the console by removing access to your account or any services offered by Nintendo on that specific system. The PlayStation 5 actually has something like this, and the original Switch even has it as well. You can either get banned in a game for cheating, harassment, whatever guidelines that you break in that game, Or you can get your Sony/Nintendo account banned for violating one of their terms or conditions. And potentially, you could get your console banned for violating those conditions as well. So if you've ever seen people tell you, don't go online with a modded Nintendo Switch, this is why. If you go online with a modded Nintendo Switch, you risk the chance of your Nintendo Switch console being banned from being used online. This is kind of blown up recently because a lot of people and content creators are assuming that this is the same thing as breaking your console. While yes, it is pretty scummy of them to do this, it isn't anything new. Anyways, that was the last thing I wanted to address in this video, and I hope that cleared up some things for you, as the person who decided to watch this video. If you have any other questions, please feel free to comment down below. Anyways, I hope everyone has fun with their Switch 2 next week, and please consider subscribing if you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching!